Trailing Vinca. This is what Trailing Vinca seeds look like. I sow Trailing Vinca seeds by broadcasting them evenly across the soil surface. After that, don't forget to give a very light sprinkle of water. Please keep soil moist until seeds germinate. Trailing Vinca need darkness to germinate. Even a small amount of light may hinder Trailing Vinca germination. Trailing Vinca seed start to germinate. This is what Trailing Vinca cotyledon look like. For me, Trailing Vinca seed usually germinate between day 6 to day 10. For me, optimal germination temperature for Trailing Vinca are about 25 degrees Celsius 77 degrees Fahrenheit. In this video, I use 10 Trailing Vinca seeds. For me, Trailing Vinca success germination rate depend on seeds quality, seed age, moisture, and temperature. If you propagate Trailing Vinca using seeds, it is common to have some seeds fail to germinate. For me, on average, Trailing Vinca seed viability are about 1 year. Trailing Vinca seed viability is greatly affected by its quality at the time of collection, its treatment between collection, storage, and the conditions in which it is stored. It seems my Trailing Vinca germination rate for this time are about 80%. Trailing Vinca true leaf emerging. In cooler climate, usually you can start to propagate Trailing Vinca at 8 to 12 weeks before last frost date. This last frost date and temperature varies greatly depending on your state, county, elevation, and even whether you live in an urban or rural environment. For starting seed indoor, as soon as seedlings emerge, please provide light to seedlings. You can put them on a sunny windowsill or grow seedlings beneath LED grow lights. Distance grow light from plant depend on LED wattage of your lights, the amount of ambient light, and the type of plant you are growing. A general rule is that LED lights should be about 12 to 30 inches from the top of your plant. As your plants grow, you have to change the height of your lights to accommodate the growing plant's height. For growing seedling using grow lights, do not leave lights on for 24 hours. Please give Trailing Vinca seedling 8 to 10 hours of dark period. Using incandescent bulbs will not work for this process because they will get too hot and they will burn your plants. Before plant Trailing Vinca seedlings in the garden, they need to be hardened off. This hardening off process toughens the Trailing Vinca plant cell structure and reduces transplant shock and scalding. If you don't harden your plants, most likely the young plants will get burned by the sun, the shock of cold, or the wind. If frost threatens at night, cover or bring containers indoors, then take them out again in the morning. You also need to protect young Trailing Vinca plants from rain and hot sun. For most plants, begin hardening off a week before the final frost date for your area. After your plant have been hardening off, you can transplant them to new container or sowing directly in the garden. For planted to new container, choose your desirable pot that is 1 to 2 inches larger than the current size, if the plant is currently in a 10 inches pot or smaller. For example, if your current pot size is greater than 10 inches, choose a pot that is 2 to 3 inches larger in diameter. For me, best time to transplant Trailing Vinca to new container are in early morning or late afternoon. For me, optimal temperature range for growing Trailing Vinca is about 25 to 32 degrees Celsius, 77 to 89.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Trailing Vinca need at least daytime temperatures at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, 27.7 degrees Celsius. For night temperatures at very least 69 degrees Fahrenheit per 20.5 degrees Celsius. Growing Trailing Vinca in temperatures below 64 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 degrees Celsius can stunt plant growth and cause leaves to turn yellow. If you grow Trailing Vinca under 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 degrees Celsius, for several days after flower bud develop, it can delay flowering. Trailing Vinca will die if growing temperature are greater than 38 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 10 days. Soil I use for growing Trailing Vinca contain cocoa peat, red burn soil, micro, fine sand, old humus, and charcoal. Trailing Vinca prefer to grow in sandy loam soils. Trailing Vinca also can be grown in poor, well-drained soils. You can use whatever growing media available to your convenience. As long as you use well-drained soil to grow Trailing Vinca, you'll be fine. Trailing Vinca prefer to grow in acidic soil condition but will tolerate high pH soils. For me, soil pH for growing Trailing Vinca are from 5.5 to 6.2 pH. My soil pH when I try to grow Trailing Vinca are about 7 pH. Soil pH is a measure of the acidity or alkalinity in soils. In the pH scale, pH 7.0 is neutral. Soil pH affects nutrients available for plant growth. In highly acidic soil, aluminum and manganese can become more available and more toxic to plant while calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium are less available to the plant. For example, soil less than 4.6 pH are too acid for most plants. In highly alkaline soil, phosphorus and most micronutrients become less available. Without an adequate supply of phosphorus, plant growth is diminished, maturity delayed, and yield reduced. At 7.5 pH, iron availability becomes a problem on alkaline soil. In plants' nutrition, iron is required for photosynthesis and chlorophyll synthesis. 8.3 pH and above are too alkaline for most plants to grow. Most plants thrive in the 6.0 to 7.0 pH, slightly acidic to neutral, range. You can measure your soil pH by using pH meters. Flower bud emerging. Trailing Vinca flower are tubular flowers with 4 to 5 flattened petal-like lobes. This Trailing Vinca flower is red to light pink in colors. Trailing Vinca flower are free-flowering, yellow round on the leaf are moth or butterfly eggs. Free-flowering means that the plant produces flowers freely, generously, and in profusion. Trailing Vinca flower are bisexual flowers. Bisexual flowers contain both male and female reproductive organs in the same flower. First bloom in the season. Trailing Vinca are moth and butterfly food plant. Both moth and butterfly love to lay egg at Trailing Vinca leaves. In this video you can see a tiny black pellets. This tiny black pellets in fact a caterpillar frass. This caterpillar will stop eating only when they need to pupation. Pupation is the life stage of some insects undergoing transformation between the larval and adult stages. Since caterpillars are heavy eaters compared to their small size, we need to protect our plant from being eaten by them. We can protect Trailing Vinca by using plant netting. Trailing Vinca flowering habit are polycarpic. Polycarpic plants are those that flower and set seeds many times before dying. In less than 24 hours, this is what Trailing Vinca look like if you let caterpillar eat your plant. Now, let's see how long does it take the plant to recover. The upside of caterpillar eating my Trailing Vinca is that I don't need to pinching my plant. Pinching is a pruning method generally used on young plants to encourage branching. After Trailing Vinca flower, they will produce dehiscent dry fruit. Dehiscent means the pericarp splits open at maturity and releases the seeds. For me, my Trailing Vinca plant produced seed pod after 295 days of planting. Trailing Vinca immature seed pod colors are green. Trailing Vinca mature seed pod color are brown. For me, on average, it takes 45 to 50 days for Vinca seed pod to mature, from green to brown. For me, on average, Trailing Vinca seed pod contain 18 to 25 seeds. Trailing Vinca need at least 8 hours of sun to thrive. Trailing Vinca prefer to grow in hot locations exposed to full sun. Trailing Vinca can also be grown in partial shade. In my climate, I grow my Trailing Vinca in full sun location. Container size I use to grow Trailing Vinca. Height 22 centimeters. Width 29 centimeters. You also can grow Trailing Vinca in bigger container than mine. The bigger the container, the bigger root system will develop and will resulting lush plant. For Trailing Vinca, they can spread up to 30 centimeters, 12 inches. When growing Trailing Vinca, please make sure your container have good drainage. Waterlogged container will promote root rot. For me, the advantage for growing in container is gives me more control over sunlight, moisture, and temperature. If grow Trailing Vinca in a garden, space plants around 25 centimeters, 10 inches apart. On average, every time I water my plant, water usage are about 300 milliliters. Time I water my plant is between 7 to 8 in the morning. If you can, please avoid watering in the evening, since at night, water tends to rest in the soil around the roots, which encourages fungal growth and insects infestation. Overwatering will promote root rot. Always water Trailing Vinca at the root zone. Please don't water from overhead. Water usage depend on container size, container type, weather, and climate you live in. Trailing Vinca water preference are moderate watering. When established, Trailing Vinca is fairly drought-tolerant plant. Trailing Vinca native to Europe, Northwest Africa, and Southwest Asia. Trailing Vinca lifespan are short-lived perennials, semi-annual, annual-like plant, depend on climate you grow in. Trailing Vinca in my climate lifespan are short-lived perennials. Vinca plant are from family Apocynaceae. Trailing Vinca can be propagated by seed or stem cutting. There are 3 of the Vinca cultivar. The first one is Trailing type Vinca, which are good for hanging baskets. The second one is Border type Vinca, which grow more vigorous and form upright mounds like Catharanthus roseus. The third type of Vinca are Dwarf type, which can grow up to 35 centimeters, 14 inches in height. When growing my Trailing Vinca, I use liquid fertilizer. I use fertilizer on my Vinca plant every 3 weeks. Time I use fertilizer on my plant are at 7 to 8 in the morning. You can use whatever fertilizer available to your convenience. Please don't overfeed the plant. Sign of overfertilization: defoliation, very slow or no growth, yellowing and wilting of lower leaf and browning leaf tips. Please read and follow the instructions carefully before starting using any fertilizers. My minimum temperature when growing Trailing Vinca is 24 degrees Celsius, and my maximum temperature when growing Trailing Vinca is 33 degrees Celsius. My average humidity when growing Trailing Vinca are about 88%. According to American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, ASPCA, Vinca are toxic to dogs, toxic to cats, toxic to horses. It is recommended to keep it out of the reach of your pets. It is also recommended to keep it out of the reach of young children. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more videos.